Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. And welcome to another episode of Glass Half Full, a podcast and a safe platform where we talk with a variety of teachers, entrepreneurs, spiritualists, uplifters, givers, shakers, and serenaders. Everyone has a lesson to learn and a lesson to share. Let's use our life experiences to enrich someone's heart, mind, spirit, and soul. Through sharing our experiences, we can be a learning inspiration for one another. I'm your host, Chris Levens. Let's welcome today's guest. Today's guest is Constantin Morun. Constantin Morun is a neuroencoding and transformational growth specialist. In his journey, he has overcome lifelong battles with depression, anxiety, and the 10 thieves of our dreams: procrastination, hesitation, fear of failure, success, rejection, imposter syndrome, self-loathing, self-doubt, stress, and overwhelm. Forms the cornerstone of his 2+ decades in personal and professional development. His mission is to empower and guide you in discovering your why, rewiring your brain, and overcoming limiting beliefs to unlock your full potential. As someone who is still on his transformative journey, he warmly invites you to join him in his process of growth and self-discovery. Let's give a warm welcome to Constantin Morun.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Good morning, good morning. Oh, you're very welcome. How are you today?
Oh, I'm excellent. I mean, it's Friday in Canada here, Friday morning. I have a beautiful day ahead of me. So, I'm excited. I'm excited to just have the opportunity to talk to you today, to your audience, and also just enjoy life. Every day has been a blessing.
Yes.
Especially now that I know a lot more about myself, about my why, my purpose, and I get to live it every day.
All right now. All right. Well, we welcome you. And we welcome you to being a guest here on Glass Half Full. We're happy to have you. And let's jump right on in. Yes. Oh, first, how's the weather today where you are? Tell us where you are and what time it is, please.
Yeah, I'm in Canada. I'm on the east coast of Canada. It's 8 in the morning, or 8:30, I should say. And
what's the East Coast? Help me. What city are we near?
Oh, East Coast. I'm talking about Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Oh, wow. Okay.
One of the farther provinces out east in Canada. It's a fairly small in population, large in size. And it would be, for those that are from North America, it would be east of Boston.
Got it.
So not too far from that area. But it's cold. I mean, it's winter. Canada has some harsh winters at times, right?
I believe you. Excellent. Well, we're going to jump right on in. I like to ask all my guests this first question. I believe that our lives are in spiritual design. Can you share your life layout or blueprint with everyone? How you grew up, where, your family lifestyle?
Oh, I love that the statement you just made. That I agree with you. There is definitely a spiritual connection there that we don't all fully understand yet. I grew up in Eastern Europe. I was born in Romania during a time of crisis, let's say, a fear, scarcity, because the country was still run by the communists back then. And for the most part, I was shielded from all the negative stuff. However, I mean, when you grow up in an environment like that, it takes its toll on you. And that's what I grew up in. Then at 17, my parents decided to move to Canada to give my brother and I a chance at a better life. So we've been spending our lives since then in Canada, and that was back in 2000. And I went to school here. I have a mathematics degree with an engineering and computer science background. And I followed the traditional path, so to speak, right? Go to school, get a job in corporate, climb the corporate ladder, and live the American/Canadian dream. Mm-hmm. And while I was doing that, of course, I did a lot of other things on my own, such as always being passionate about psychology, and on the more fun side, let's say, that someone can call a hobby, gaming. And at one point, I was a professional poker player and coach.
Oh, wow.
Yes. I know. Every time I say that, people are like, okay, I didn't think that that was a thing. But yes, I
No,
did.
you're right. I'm just surprised that, to hear you say it. A lot of people don't know about it or to be it. My sister was in this industry, so I'm aware of it, but I was shocked to hear like, oh, wow. Okay. You know about
Yeah,
this. Yeah.
exactly. So I was fortunate enough to get lucky early on, let's say, and got really good really fast. And then I was able to coach and mentor people for a decade, creating content for a lot of the big websites out there for poker specifically. And that really ignited the passion in helping others within me because it was always there. I always mentored people and tutored people in high school and university years, and then soccer and other aspects of life. So poker kind of brought it all back, and I realized, you know what, there's something to look for in there.
Wow. I love that. You never know how it's going to be, right? Or what you're
Exactly.
learning. And that's that spiritual design. We're in preparation for things we didn't even know we're preparing for, and so.
I love that. I love that. Absolutely.
Wow, nice. How has the experience of growing up in the Eastern Europe during that communist era, how has that shaped your perspective on personal growth and resilience?
I love the question, Chris. And if we had a conversation a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when I didn't really understand the trauma that came with that and all the learned behaviors and limiting beliefs, it would be very, very different. The way I see it now is that because of the time period and the place I was born in and the way society was back then, there were definitely a lot of limiting beliefs that were essentially existing within the environment. So my caretakers, my grandparents, my parents, my teachers, that were imprinting on, let's say, as the children without necessarily
It's that
wanting to.
pathology, yeah.
Exactly. It's what they knew. They wanted the best. And what I mean by that, by limiting beliefs, I mean, I'm talking things such as, I'm a man, right? So boys don't cry, boys don't do art, boys, do the do the hard things in life, and they
It's
go after.
traditional, yes.
Exactly. Now, what does it do to you? That's something that I've come to realize more in the last year or so. So when that's all you hear growing up, right? You start to internalize that, and you start to put your own boxes around yourself. And it's not that you just have boxes put by society and everyone else like we thought, but it's also what you do to yourself. And I became very good at essentially having a limited, or I would say a fixed mindset, meaning that if there was a mistake, I'll beat myself up, right? If there was a mistake, I wouldn't necessarily look at the lesson. I would try to just move on and go to the next thing, because that was the type of culture you grow up in. Because if you made mistakes, you were punished, right? If you made mistakes, you're made to feel less than. If you made mistakes, you were admonished, right? So all those things pile up pretty fast. So I would say that was part of the influence. I mean, there's a lot more because there's also positive stuff, right? We're talking about, let's say, the negative aspects. Lots of positive, lots of love, lots of compassion, lots of that stuff that, of course, played a huge role in my life as well.
Wow. I love that. That's deep. That's deep. And these things help make us who we are today. And those hard times in the time you feel like this is the worst ever. But in today's times, I'm happy for the hard moments that I've had in my life, because they have they have given me those corner pieces, like in the puzzle. It's that foundation. You need this. And without this, the rest of it's not going to work. And that's what I mean by the corner piece. But, wow. I can only imagine. So moving us up now. So as a holistic life empowerment mentor and coach, I love that title. That's a lot. Sounds good. So first breakdown, what is this? People can have an idea, but tell us exactly what is the breakdown of this title?
Yeah, for sure. I love that question because, of course, all of us have different definitions for what some of those words mean.
Yes.
Holistic is one of those words. And for me, holistic is this idea that when we look at our life and we look at wanting to improve ourselves, there are various facets of life that most people navigate towards. You might want to improve your physical health, and that may mean you need to improve your sleep, your activity level, the way you eat. And there's not, the way you supplement, the way you take medication, all the stuff falls under the physical bucket. And what tends to happen, and I'm speaking from personal experience here because I've been doing this quite a bit and I see it in people I work with, we tend to have seasons in our life. So this is, maybe I have a wedding coming up in the summer. I'm going to focus a lot on my physical aspect, right? I want to lose the weight. I want to be able to enjoy the summer. And what tends to happen is that we focus so much in one area to the detriment of other areas of our life. And that's what I used to do in my life, right? When I was climbing the corporate ladder or wanting to be the top of the top performers in my jobs, I would focus on the next pillar, which would be your mindset or anything to do with your mental side, right? And then I would do that, and I would do what else? Well, I would not really care as much about how I ate, how I slept, because I would sacrifice those things to focus a lot more on the mental side of things. And then there's the emotional side of things, which is something as a man I struggled all my life up to recently to actually get a hold of, because again, I was shown and taught not to show emotions, not to let them overtake you, not to cry, not to do any of those things. And the fourth pillar, so there's four pillars I talk about when it comes to holistic approach, is the spiritual side of it. You mentioned it a couple of times, and spiritual to me means your connection to your God, your divine, the universe, whatever you believe in, if you believe in anything, and your connection to nature. And we are part of nature, which means that it's your connection to yourself and to those around you and to the world at large, and of course, everything in it, right? To animals, trees, everything like that. So when I say holistic, if we go back to the first pillar, the physical one, it's about realizing that, yes, there will be seasons of your life. You will focus more, maybe, these 3 months on the emotional side, but don't ignore the other sides of you. So when someone comes to work with me, we don't just look in isolation. Oh, you have an emotional blockage, so we're going to go unlock that and then ignore the rest. We look at your life holistically from all aspects, because otherwise what I have found is that as you fix one thing, something else will break.
Right. Well, this is it, right? And if you're not getting that foundation worked on, that house is going to collapse, or whatever it is that you're going to put on. So you need to get the pieces in and get them in the right order of what needs to be done. So that makes complete sense.
Well, here's a funny thing, though, right? For most of us, it's not like if you don't take a look at your life holistically and start to approach every aspect of it and try to have a bit of a balance, your life is not going to be great. I mean, I look at my life, right? I had a great career. I had a great family life when I uncovered all of this, but I was feeling unfulfilled. I was feeling little joy despite having shiny toys and everything that you would want, despite many other beautiful things happening in my life. And I was depressed, suicidal even at times.
Wow.
And you would wonder why, right? And that was my big question. Like, why? This doesn't make any sense. I did everything that everyone else told me to do. I acquired and achieved everything that everyone else wants to achieve and acquire. Why am I feeling this way? And it was through that unpacking and realizing that by focusing so much on one area, I ignored the rest so much that they're pulling me down.
It starved them. Yeah.
Exactly, right? And there's another piece that around doing things you truly love versus just doing things that everyone else told you that you will love, right? So it's like living someone else's life rather than living the life you want to live, following your heart. So that's a deeper conversation we can go into. But essentially, going back to your question, like with the title, right? So I thought about it, okay, what am I helping people achieve? What's the outcomes that people will have from working with me? And the outcomes have to do, for me, with them being empowered to make any changes they want in life without me by their side. Because I'm here, my mission in life, as I said, is to inspire and empower, guide and support individuals on their life journey so they too can find joy, fulfillment, happiness, success, abundance in life. And then their world becomes a better place. Now, if that's the case, if someone comes to work with me, as many do, it's not a life sentence, so to speak, right? We come in, we tackle a problem, I empower you with the right tools and the right mindset and the right foundation, as you mentioned. I call it the psychology is our foundation. And then off you go and you're empowered to do life. And that's what the life empowerment piece comes in, because it's all about realizing that no matter what comes up your way, you have the knowledge and the tools to do something about it. Now, it's your choice if you want to do something about it, but at least you know that no matter what shows up in your life, you have the knowledge and the tools to deal with it.
And, that's key. I think, I love that, because that's my huge thing, is that we need tools for our toolbox. when Chris is not there or Constantin is not there or other people are not there, what can you do? The bracelets back in the day. Do you remember the bracelets around the hand? They'd be like, what would Jesus do? Is like the W.
Yes,
Yeah, those
yes.
bracelets everybody was wearing, and this is it, and I've had lots of friends say to me, sometimes when I'm in a fix, I think like, what would Chris do? And I love that. And I was like, well, I'm glad that I would give you that step of power to do something maybe that you wouldn't do yourself in a moment that you really need that extra push. Because we have to be able to push ourselves. So like you mentioned, having tools to be able to have is key. When you're not there and they're in a pickle, they can go into that toolbox and pull out something to help. And that's awesome. I love that.
I mean, one of my mentors, he always says knowledge is power.
It is.
And then you hear other people challenge it and be like, no, knowledge is not power, action is power. I'm somewhere in the middle, meaning that knowledge is power, but here's where we fall short, I would say, as human beings. And I'm included in that section as well. Most of my life I was. Just because you have knowledge doesn't mean you're actually going to do anything with it.
This is true, right?
You have free will, right, Chris? So
yes.
What happens is that, again, as human beings, we have the knowledge. Perhaps we don't necessarily have yet the belief in ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps the circumstances, the environment we're in are not the best. And the knowledge is not enough. We need more than just the knowledge. But at least the knowledge gives you that power to say, you know what, I'm aware that whatever I'm doing is not good for my long term, or even my short term. And I now have a choice. Do I continue doing it and suffer the consequences or the outcomes? Or do I make a change? And I always talk about this and I say awareness is half the battle. So that's actually very important.
I agree too. We can't fix something if we don't know that it's broken.
Exactly, right?
Right. So when you're aware
of something you don't like,
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, please.
No, that's it. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, no, it's, awareness is key. You're right. And it's a step-by-step process, everybody on their own time. But there are some steps that need to be taken. There are some steps that need to happen in that. So, yes. So these are these are the principles or strategies that you believe that can help unlock people's full potential, correct? It was.
Well, that's part of it. You mentioned foundation,
mm-hmm.
which I think is key for us to talk about. And for me, foundation, I call it our psychology. I hinted at this a bit earlier. And here's what I believe our foundation is, and I'll explain why in a second. Now, but before I do that, one thing I'll ask you, Chris, and the audience. People say that a mindset you have is key to success. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But have you tried to employ someone else's mindset or someone else's advice around mindset and failed?
Of course.
Most of us have, right?
Yeah, of course. Some because you don't have any other choice, but yeah, definitely. I think everybody could say we've experienced that at some point in our life.
Exactly. So when people say the mindset is everything, then I ask them that question and I say, okay, so if mindset is everything, why have you not been able to take any mindset you see out there and say, you know what, I want to replicate that? And trust me, I've been the same way in many aspects of my life, including especially on my weight loss journey and other aspects. Because what happens is you take a mindset, you apply it on your foundation, whatever your foundation is.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, if that foundation is not rock solid, a bit of wind comes through. And that bit of wind can be from the environment. Someone says something mean to you. You have something happen at work. Someone breaks up with you. Someone close to you perhaps gets ill or something else that's not ideal. And then you start to self-sabotage. You start to fall apart, right? So that wind knocks down your new mindset because the foundation was weak. So
and you're right. I agree as well to say that it's about the mind. The mindset is one thing, but it's really about the mind that we're dealing with, right? Depending about, because you can set all you want, but if it's not that type of mind or you're not that, it's not going to happen. And like you say, it'll just be blown over at the first chance that something happens. And then we're back to, it kind of reminds me of the New Year's resolutions. I personally don't make it for myself because I don't want to feel like I'm starting the year off with a lie. You know what I mean? I'm not going to say anything because I have been on the side of being like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. And then you don't do it and that's it. Or like you say, something comes along, knocks you right off. And then the second month into the year, you're not even into it. So this whole thing about it, it's just like choose your
Well,
battles.
I love to look at the science and statistics and research and whatnot, and especially I've made a video for my podcast on this topic and the New Year resolution, right? And the numbers are staggering. By the end of the year, like maybe a few percent of people actually wanted, right? By halfway through, more than half are pretty much done them. And you're absolutely right. It's because of that foundation. And what's the foundation? Here's where it gets really interesting. And this is based on my background in neuroscience, neuropsychology, psychology. I mentioned that's been a passion of mine, been studying for a while. I got myself certified in something called neuroencoding, which is the language of our nervous system and subconscious mind. So anyway,
we ready. Give it to us, Constantin. Give it to us.
Yes. Foundation is psychology. Your thoughts about yourself, your beliefs about yourself, your thoughts and beliefs about others, your thoughts and beliefs about the world. And let me explain.
Yes.
If, let's say, you or me and grew up in Eastern Europe, many people told you cannot do this because you're a boy, or people don't do this, whatnot, you start to internalize that. People, let's say, physically and emotionally and mentally beat you up because you make a mistake. I remember still being in school, and they use the ruler and sometimes even more, their hand to admonish you for not doing something right. And that happened, right? And some people, unfortunately, have parents that hit them as well, right? So those things happen to many people, actually, more than we think. And what happens? We take it in as children, right? Because for the first 7 years, we're sponges. Our conscious mind is not fully developed, so we absorb everything. And then that becomes our programming. That becomes essentially our belief system that fuels our thoughts as well. And most of my life, I had a lot of these beliefs and thoughts that either you're not worthy of something, you're a procrastinator, you're a hesitator, whatever the case might be. You're stupid, you're ugly. People fill in a lot of these boxes themselves. So if those are the beliefs and thoughts that are at the foundation level, that's just about you, right? But how about other people? Mm-hmm. What if you feel like you can't trust anyone? Everyone is untrustworthy. What if you feel that you have thoughts and beliefs about the world, that the world is in such a terrible shape that there is no future, that the world is going to end in 10 years, that you focus so much on the negativity? What does that do to the rest of the things you want to do in life? So let's say this scenario, I'm someone that has a lot of these negative limiting beliefs and thoughts, and then I try to apply a mindset of someone that doesn't have those, right? Because the person that created the mindset or said, hey, I figured it out, copy this, they didn't have my upbringing, they didn't have any of these limiting beliefs and thoughts, so it worked for them, but very unlikely that it works for me. So that's why if we tweak. Exactly, Chris, right? So you come back to this first, you fix those, and it's actually a lot easier to fix than people think. Then you can apply any mindset you want on top, and your foundation is rock solid, that you have a much higher chance of success.
That makes sense. That makes sense completely. And being that, I want to back up to about the emotional. You spoke about feeling that you weren't able to basically feel emotionally free. Was one of the things that was holding you back, meaning, about how you had grown up. How did you or how are you working through this area? And when you say that, do you mean that, are you a person who cries today? Do you shed tears naturally? Is it something you've learned to develop to do, that you break down? How are you working in that area?
I love the question, Chris. So I always knew growing up and in my adult years that I was an emotional person. Whatever emotional means to everyone. For me, emotional means that I would cry during certain movies and scenes, and if I see something beautiful or something less than beautiful, right? But I would always stifle it. I would always try my best to hide it, because the way I was taught growing up, right? The boys don't cry. You cannot show emotion as a man in Eastern Europe, and all that stuff that came up with it.
And I guess it was nothing that you really saw in front of you. There was no example of display of that, was it?
not from men.
Okay.
Definitely not from men.
This is it. Okay.
So yeah, that's a great point, Chris. Absolutely, 100%. That, that kind of solidified the idea that, hey, you cannot do this. And then, of course, I didn't see it with my friends either, right? I mean, at some funerals, perhaps, but that's about it. But then, I mean, personally, I knew that, I mean, every single one of us is different. And I knew that I was different as well, meaning that we're all unique. We have similarities, but we're also different. And I felt that, you know what? I mean, I felt emotions, and what I mentioned is really important. It's not just crying for the sad stuff, for the terrible things that happen, but also for beauty. That's
I think that's the most touching, is the fact of, like, to shed a tear during a movie. Like, oh my gosh, certain movies, they're like, I just can't even watch. I'll be a wreck. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Wow. And so what, about how old would you say that you felt that you were able to start to release or feel free to express?
I love the question. I'm smiling here because it wasn't too long ago. So I'm 40 now.
Bless your heart.
It's maybe when it really first started when I went on my, let's call it, the spiritual awakening journey a few years back now. So back when I was 38, early 2022. So a couple of years ago now.
Nice.
When I finally understood more. And then since then, I've been working with a couple of mentors, one that helped me tremendously, and I'm still working with her. She's a hypnotherapist. So I go in hypnosis over Zoom, like you and I are talking right now.
And you're really like hypnotized.
But not like the stage hypnotism, right? Like essentially what you're doing is, I'll simplify it to how I understand that your brain, your conscious mind, I call it the monkey brain, we quiet it down so then you can go have a conversation with your subconscious mind.
Got it.
And your subconscious mind is essentially everything that you've ever done in your life. Everything is stored within that. It's almost like your file cabinet with everything that happened. So literally we are able to go in and pull a memory from when I was 2 years old or 3 years old, traumatic memory. And I didn't think I had trauma in my life. And oh boy, I had plenty. And we're still unpacking a lot of it. It's kind of like an onion, right? Like you take a layer off and there's another one. You take another layer off and there's more.
Wow.
And that's how this journey has been for me. And I would say, I mean, hypnotherapy was one. Mindfulness practices. So I do meditation now. I do breath work. I do other type of spiritual practices that have helped immensely. And then I just allow myself to feel the emotions. Because again, before, the instinct would be to literally stifle and cut out the feeling side, which meant you can't truly feel your emotions. Because the idea with emotions, the way I see it now, is that if something comes up, it's about you feeling it and then letting it go.
Yes, you have to let it go. You have to release it.
Yeah, because if you start feeling it, you're like, this doesn't feel good. You push it down. You're not feeling it and you're not releasing it, and then it balls up like a volcano.
Yeah, it's going to come back again with a vengeance. In the wrong time, at the wrong place.
Exactly. 100%.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that, for sure. And in this current moment now, do you feel that, let me ask you, are you close with your family?
I am much closer now, especially as I embarked on this journey.
I've
always been close with them. No, not physically, as my brother is in Europe. I only have one sibling.
Understandable.
My parents are across the country in Canada, but we are, when we get together, we're very close and we talk often. And as I'll say, this journey that I'm on put me much, much closer with everyone in my family, but also my friends as well.
Has it changed their view of things from you seeing how you are? Because the family knows you, right? And so to see a change in a positive way, has it affected them at all? Have they?
Yeah, so I love the question. I want to expand slightly on it.
Sure.
As I embarked on my journey, actually, let me add one thing, because the answer is yes. So I'll answer your question right away. But I want to explain something, because I don't believe, when I talk to people about this, they're like, they don't realize the impact they could have by just working on themselves. Mm-hmm. So I've been someone that in the past, if let's say, Chris, you and I are friends, right? And I see something that I don't like about you, I'll try to change that. In you, not in me. And that was the same with partners or relationships. So like I would play the victim as like, that's a Chris thing, right? Or that's my mom's thing or something else. And later on in life, I realized, wait a second, everything that I'm seeing in others I don't like, it's usually a reflection of how I feel inside about myself. So there's something to unpack there. And what I've realized is that as I put all the energy into working on myself and letting everyone else work on themselves, not trying to control anything, everything changed. Like you asked, my relationship with my parents, partner, brother, everything improved. Friends. Why? Because as I change myself, as I elevate my vibration, my frequency, as I become a different person, a better person, I would say, then people will see that, people will feel that.
Yeah, it's a ripple effect. You're right.
They might be inspired, they might be empowered to go. Not all of them, right? Some will be scared, some will fall off, and that has happened. I had friends that kind of fell off because it is scary. It is a bit, wow, you're going through that.
Everybody's not meant to be on the journey. And that's a real reality too, that everybody is not supposed to be in every season. That there are some seasonal friends and there are some people who are lifetime friends. And so I think that it's important that when it happens that way, then you realize that it wasn't meant to be for a longer period. And that's okay. We keep on moving. We've learned something from that relationship. But yeah, no big deal. Everyone's not meant to be for the long haul.
You're absolutely 100% right. And yeah, that was a big scary part for me. But anyway, yeah, there's a big change. And for example, my mother, she listens to every episode of my podcast. She's one of my biggest fans. And I've seen the biggest changes within her. Because keep in mind, my parents grew up in Eastern Europe.
Yeah, they're the real deal. Yeah.
Right. And through some really difficult times. And they were about 40-ish, mid-40s when we moved to Canada. So there was a lot of ingrained mentality and beliefs within the system, right? So to break it apart now in the mid-60s, that's difficult. That's not easy to do. And I, have a lot of respect for them for even attempting to do that, because most people at that age, they just say, you know what, that's who I am.
Kind of stuck in their ways. True. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's it.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I didn't want to step on you.
If the audience wants to take anything from that, is that by working on yourself, you're actually going to have a massive impact on your entire environment and anything in it.
This is so true. Yeah, you're right.
Coworkers, manager, anything.
And they will see a change in you because they know it to be so real that it would have to be something that has made this change. And the consistency of anything gives the real truth. When people see that, it's just not on Monday. He's this way. For sure. I want to change a little bit and I want to talk about you in a different way. I want to ask you, what 5 words come to mind when you think of yourself?
Funny, 2 of them, I guess there's 3 words there, but one is love, meaning that I lead my life now with the idea that regardless of the situation I find myself in, I want to lead with love first. And love is not just the romantic side, right? Compassion, empathy, everything that comes with that, as opposed to choosing the fear side, where I'm always looking at negativity. So that's the number one. Then I guess there's three other words coming up together. Is follow your heart, because that's what I'm doing right now. And I'm seeing that it brought me more joy, more fulfillment, more success, more abundance in all aspects of life than I ever thought possible. And I'm, a few years into this idea of following my heart, even though I was doing parts of it through all my life. But when I honed in on what my why, my purpose is, that was it.
Nice.
And kindness, I would say, is the last one. If you want to go for 5 words, meaning that we can.
Okay. Wait, you can give me like 2 more. I was like, follow your heart. You broke them up into actual words. Okay. We'll take that as a phrase. Okay, no worries. We could put that as one. Yeah. Kindness, number 3. We'll put the kindness as the 3rd one.
Kindness, number 3. 2 more. Oh, okay. Now you got me thinking.
Yes. We want you to think. We want you to think for yourself.
Well, inspiring. That's something that people tell me all the time. And then empowering as well.
Empowering. We love that. Yes. Oh, these are great. Love, follow your heart, kindness, inspiring, and empowering. I love it. All that wrapped up in a love bubble, right?
Absolutely.
That's 100%. a Care Bear stare for sure. For the people who know what the Care Bears are, like, yes, showing my age. But Awesome. I love that. I love that. I think it's important that we're able to share and talk about the good things of what we are. My students always go to a negative. They throw themselves under the bus. And I'm like, okay, now that you've said 3 negative things, can I at least get 1 positive? You know what I mean? Like, can we like even it out a bit? So I think it's nice when we take a moment to think for ourselves, what qualities do I put forth when you have to think of like, when I think of who I am and what I represent. It's a refreshing in the mind of what it is that we're doing and who we are and just what our mission is. So it's nice when someone else asks it because we're never asking it to ourselves, right? So thank you for that answer.
We can start. So it sounds like, you're teaching people the right thing to do. Ask those questions, because it has to come from a point where you ask yourself those questions.
It's true, because it's true. If you're not leading with love, then what are you leading with? Right? We know fear or anger or aggression, and this is it. A lot of people don't, that light bulb hasn't clicked on yet. They haven't had that aha or that, spiritual awakening or any awakening. And so I just tell people that sense of awareness, like we spoke about earlier, just having that chance of just listening in and just taking a look at self. What am I doing with myself? How am I viewed? What am I looking like to the world? And soon as you start to ask some of these questions, the rabbit hole begins and you are just taken on a journey. But I always say, when people are ready to take the journey, everybody's not ready. They don't want to do it. And I say, hey, in everyone's time. But once we start to unravel, you can't go back. You can't not know.
Exactly how I said as well. It's almost like, if you think about it, you're inside of an eggshell and the sun and everything is outside of it, but you don't see anything inside. But then a crack comes through. Well, once the crack comes through and the sun peeks through and all the beauty, you won't forget that. You can't hide anymore. You're going to be like, okay, I need to dig myself out of this.
Mm-hmm. It's true. Yeah. It's true. I wanted to ask you, who's around you that keeps you motivated?
It's going to be a selfish answer, but it starts with me. If I can motivate myself, if I can't...
Self-motivation.
Yes, exactly. Then I've seen it in the past. Not a lot does for the long term, right? Because I'll see someone on YouTube that's done amazing things, might motivate me for a week, right? I have my mentors and coaches who motivate me and inspire me. I see the people in my life, my friends and family and partner. But what I've learned is that unless I have my own sources somehow, like within, then it's not very long lasting.
That's true. I'm a self-motivator as well. And sometimes, I don't need anybody to motivate me, but I do have friends that need that motivation, and I get it. Sometimes we need to jumpstart ourselves. But I'm like, I'm my biggest cheerleader. I will take the best care of myself. And I do. And all my friends know I treat myself this way. So I'm not going to let anybody not treat me. If I treat myself this way, how dare that you're going to treat me any different? Like, we're not going to deal with that. But having standards and having, ideals about what we want for ourselves is huge. It's important. So I like your answer. And you didn't have to say this is a selfish. No, it's your truth. It's your truth.
This may sound selfish, but you're absolutely right, because I said that because I know when people hear that, it's like, and maybe that's a topic we can discuss if you want, Chris, the idea of being selfish. Because if you look at self-care, if you look at self-love,
you have to be.
Self.
Yeah.
It appears selfish on the outside, and I use selfish here, and it's funny because it has such a negative connotation. But selfish is not negative.
I agree.
It's like prioritizing yourself, because if your health is not a priority, and I'm saying health across mental, physical, emotional, spiritual areas, if that's not health, then how can you care for anyone else? How can you help other people? How can you be the best person for your loved ones? I haven't seen a way. I haven't found a way.
Because it's not.
So that's why it's not selfish at all. It's selfless even.
And that's it. Selfless. Maybe we will put that into it, because you have to be. Otherwise, people will starve you. Society will starve you. Social media will starve you. And it's at the end, how do you replenish yourself? How do you refill your energy and your plate so that you can be ready to handle what the world is going to put on you? So spiritually, fed, people are starving spiritually. Their soul is in need of nourishment, and their heart is in need of nourishment. The mind, there's food that needs to be given on different levels. And so I agree with that. Definitely. Definitely. Nice. Thank you for that answer. I want to change a little bit and talk about your podcast. What inspired you to start a podcast, and why is it called Unleash Thyself?
Love those questions. Thank you for asking, Chris.
Yes.
So I would start with what inspired me. So 2022, beginning of 2022 is when we were all coming out of the pandemic, right? And Canada was opening up, and I decided to go on this mental health retreat in the jungles of Ecuador, in the mountains, beautiful, 10,000 feet up in the air, gorgeous place. And while I was there for a few weeks, I also had a chance to sit with native sacred plant medicine that was being passed down generation by generation. And that kind of opened my mind up to a lot of things.
Did you say medicine?
Yeah, plant medicine. So
is it like oh my gosh, I'm gonna pronounce it wrong. What's the name of it?
Ayahuasca.
Thank you. I was about to destroy that name. Okay, ayahuasca. Yes. So ayahuasca. Yes, I know what that is. Okay. Oh, how was it?
It was life transformational. Keep in mind, Chris, I'm someone that has never been drunk. I mean, I'll drink occasionally, but I've never been drunk.
Oh, wow.
Nor do I care for drugs. I've never done drugs or anything like that. Like, not even pot. Like,
Hey, this system is clean, baby. It's clean.
Yeah. So I went to this with an open mind because there was a calling within me. I was struggling mentally. As I mentioned, I was very depressed, anxious, burnt out at that point, coming out of the pandemic, like most people were, stressed out. And I wanted something else. And I wanted to experience this. And I mentioned my spiritual awakening. That's pretty much when it happened, right? The plant medicine. What people need to understand, first of all, is about medicine, which is, I didn't understand necessarily, is how sacred it is and how this has been passed down for thousands of years.
Yes.
Not just by one tribe. This is pretty much many, many tribes in the Amazonian jungles using the same type of medicine to connect to God, universe,
spiritual
divine, whatever. Yeah, exactly. Whatever a person believes in. And then there's many other plant medicines across the globe that do the same thing. Anyway, so these plant medicines are very sacred, and I was fortunate enough to be able to see with them and made some immense bonds with the people there, including people I just met that I can call friends 2 years later still, 10 plus of them. Anyway, it was transformational. I mean, what I experienced from emotions to spiritually to even physical transformations in others that I've witnessed with my own eyes over a short period of time, it really messed up with my analytical brain, right? Because I mentioned I have a mathematics degree. So for me, if I can't see it, I'd be like, well, it's not true. Well, I got to see a lot of things. And then it's like, well, how does this work? And how does that work? So that was the start of it, right? That kind of brought me up to like, okay, so there's more to life than I realized. And perhaps there's a reason why I wasn't happy, I wasn't fulfilled despite having the American dream. So then fast forward to the summer of that year, I'm sitting with a dear friend of mine. We're having a conversation, a deep spiritual conversation. And she mentions one of her mentors, someone that for the last 25 years has been essentially healing people by looking at the spirituality side of it, but also the medicine side of it. And he's been healing them of things such as cancers and fibromyalgia and diabetes, ailments that you don't necessarily have a cure for. And especially not one that involves a lot of surgery or medication. And we got into the conversation. I was skeptical, of course. But then an idea came up, and I was like, so if someone like that has been able to have such massive impact, but on a small scale, right? We're talking about a few thousand people, which is still immense.
Yes,
right?
That's huge. That's still huge.
No, it's his. But my judgmental mind at the time was like, that's nothing, right? There's like 8 billion people. Like, what's 1,000, right? But you're right. It's huge. It's beyond huge.
Yeah.
Because at the time, myself, I helped no one, right? So, of course, in hindsight, I was like, oh my, I was so judgmental. But here's the beauty of it. Even though I was that, it pretty much led to where we are today, because a thought came up, and it's like, would he be interested, this person, to have then his story and his voice shared with more people so they can find out and he can have an even bigger impact? And that's how the idea started. And she's like, yeah, you know what? I'll ask him. Took a few months. He came back and he said, yes, he would love to share his story. And then in the time, because I was still fighting my own demons, and that was the darkest period of my life, really, because I had to sit with my emotions. Now that I came back from the spiritual awakening, I had to sit with everything. I also uncovered my why, or my purpose, or what I thought it was, at least the first version of it. And for me, I mentioned it earlier, but it's about being in service to others. So I thought, oh, you know what? I'll do a podcast. I'll bring people like this person, Richard, on, because he has an amazing gift, an amazing story, and share it with others and see what happens. And then that's pretty much how it started.
So he's episode 1.
Actually, no, he's episode probably like 50 plus, because it took a while for us to book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He's someone that's not on social media. He's someone that doesn't.
What's his name?
Richard Leach. I have 3 episodes with him, and it's Richard Leach.
Okay.
And he coined essentially something called healing with purpose. So he believes that, and I actually agree with him in this one, because I'm actually being mentored by him right now, but it's a different story. He believes that everything that happens in life has a reason and a purpose behind it. Okay. And even more so when there's something wrong with you physically or emotionally, or any type of illness or ailment you have, that's spirit communicating through your body with you, because there's no other way spirit can communicate.
I agree as well. That makes sense.
Direct path, right? So if there's something wrong with you, let's say you have an issue with your liver, then he can help you pinpoint, okay, so what stress in your life is causing that? And by adjusting your life accordingly, so let's say you took a left turn and you're supposed to take a right turn spiritually. You go back, you made a right turn, a left turn, and now things get better.
It's basically like having a knot in the energy and it's being untied, and now the flow is back to where it's supposed to be.
Beautiful analogy, Chris. Absolutely. That's one way to look at it. And he devised, his story is beautiful. If anyone has time to listen to that episode,
I'm gonna check it out.
Beyond Medicine, and part 1 talks about his journey, because he was my age when he gained those powers over years. Like, he was a regular corporate employee as a designer and whatnot. He was never spiritual. And then he had these experiences that he goes through in his story. And long story short, it's just phenomenal, because he was able to download, as I call it, right? Like channel or connect to spirit and bring all this information in and devise the full practice that has multiple parts to it, and he's able to heal people. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to work with him. We work every week. He mentors me. I get a better understanding of myself, because there's many different parts. And not to say that I have anything wrong with me physically, but there's a lot of things that I'm unpacking and understanding about myself that I haven't found anywhere else. So that's why, even though it's not necessarily science proven, part of it is because there's a science called epigenetics now, which looks at how your genes, like, for example, in the past, it was thought that what's in your genes, that's essentially your fate. Like, if it's in there, you get it. If it's not, you don't. But what they've proven now is that it's not true. You can actually turn on, turn off different genes. You can actually change your gene makeup. And that's science, right? And now it's catching up with what people in the spiritual world have known forever.
Yes. So now let me ask you, do you feel that you have the power to be able to heal, or that the power is within you as well, or within all of us? 100%. Or do you think that he is just a special case?
No, absolutely. He's definitely he's been doing it for 25 years. So at the very least, he's got quite a bit of experience.
Okay, yes, of course. Outside of that. But do you think that we all have this power within us?
Yes, 100%.
Excellent.
And here's why. I think I mentioned at the beginning. Maybe I haven't. But
it's okay.
We have the power to change anything and everything about our situation.
Yes.
That means in health, that means emotionally, that means physically, that means financially, in relationships. Honestly, I do not believe there's anything that we cannot change.
Good. Well, then your practical answer. So now, if you would have answered differently, I would have been like, okay, we need to, maybe we need a little more time with him working. But this is it, and you've got the answer, And because you have the answer, then that means that it's learning how to use our abilities, how to use the power, how to be able to, but a lot of people don't even realize they have it. So that's still, that awareness isn't there yet. But when you start to wake up, like they say in that Matrix, you wake up and you realize, hey, there's a whole nother world here. There's things going on, principalities and powers that are going down, that are a sheath away of in the spiritual world that is that close to us, that's going down. And so when your eyes are revealed to this or open to this, it's a whole new day. It's a whole new day. And so I love when I feel that people have this awakening and they're realizing like, oh, snap. That light comes on, or that aha moment happens and you realize like, whoa. So I love that. Yes, go ahead.
What's funny, Chris? I've always said this saying for myself when I was doing poker, when I was diving deep into psychology. At least I had an idea of like, oh, I know a lot, right? So then I started researching, I do my studies. And then the more I studied, the less I knew, in the sense that the more I dived into something, the bigger the thing became. And that's why I felt like I knew nothing, because I'm like, oh, so it's actually like, you look behind the curtain and you realize the room is actually, you can't even see the end of it. That's kind of how it feels. And that's how, like you said, like once you come out of the matrix, so to speak, you realize that what you knew was an illusion all along.
Yes.
And we know nothing. At least that's my view now.
You become a baby again in understanding about it. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is really, and that's it. And it's just learning, and we're learning in a different way. And you're using things in a different way. And so I always feel like when people are, and you can't have this kind of conversation with everyone. And I heard you mention this earlier, because some people feel like, oh, you're crazy. Or like, what you talking about? You know what I mean? So I always had to pick to feel people like, are you awake? Do you know what's really going on? Before we get into it, because otherwise folks are looking at you and it's too much to try to explain. I was like, that's not part of my calling. So at least I don't think it is at this point, but still, I just feel like, yes.
You mentioned something earlier, which I think is key. The idea that some people are just not ready yet because they're on their own path. They have their own thing. This goes in the same vein, right? Like, you may not be ready for the conversation because your path is different and there are some missing steps that you haven't taken yet. So even if you have the conversation, you'll think I'm crazy.
Yeah.
And if you don't think I'm crazy, it probably doesn't have much value for the person.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. I wanted to ask, can you share some practical tips or exercises for individuals looking to cultivate a more holistic approach to personal development or encompassing career, relationships, well-being?
Absolutely, Chris. Absolutely.
Thank you.
And that's one of my favorites now. One of the first things I teach any of my clients, any of my friends that want to listen, and it has to do again with our psychology, going back to the thoughts and beliefs. And I want to preface with something really quick here. When you look at your thoughts and beliefs, they're influenced usually by something, right? And that's usually your environment. So you have something going on at work that's going to influence your thoughts and beliefs, meaning that if, let's say, you have a bad meeting with your manager and some things are said, you say some things, you come out of that meeting with probably some feelings already, but also some thoughts. You might feel less than ideal about yourself. You might feel less than ideal about them, right? About the job itself and whatnot. And that creates a cycle. Thoughts and beliefs then turn into feelings and emotions. Then that could feed more thoughts and beliefs. And there's this vicious cycle where if it's more of the negative side, it goes in a spiral and you essentially build yourself up with a lot of negative emotions and feelings. And what happens after the emotions and feelings? There's usually actions that come in, or it doesn't have to be just after, it could be at the same time, because you're going to take an action after. Now, it could be that you take no action, an inaction, which is also technically an action. So let's take the scenario. I am into work, I'm having a meeting with my manager, meeting doesn't go well, there's these negative thoughts and negative beliefs, and I actually have another presentation to do in 1 hour from now. Well, that presentation I have to do is another action I have to take. But because my mental state is, emotional state is the way it is now, how is that presentation going to go? I mean, there's a chance I'm still going to do fine because let's say I know the content, I know my material, I know what I'm doing. But can it be the best I could ever be? Not even close, right? It's going to have an impact.
Yeah, it will.
And after every action, there's an outcome, right? There's a result. And if my action was not the best it can be, that means that my outcome cannot be the best it can be. Mm-hmm. So if we want better outcomes, we need better actions. Mm-hmm. And if I want better actions, that means I need to feel better within. I need to have better feelings and emotions. Now, most people that have been, like myself, depressed at any stage or anxious or burnt out or stressed out, we know that you cannot just feel better at the flip of a switch. It doesn't work that way. As much as I tried to feel better in the moment, I couldn't. Mm-hmm. So then you take it a step up. So what triggers those feelings and emotions? It's your thoughts and beliefs. And that's where I believe we have 100% control over. And we can change all of them. Now, some are really deep-seated, some are really big beliefs that, of course, while you have control over them, it's going to take a lot of work to fix. But some are going to take a lot less. And then this is a snowball effect. As you start overcoming certain limiting beliefs, as you start fighting certain negative thoughts, you start to get better and better at it. And I'll give you an example of how it showed up in my life. And Chris, I'm sure you'll appreciate this example. It happened this weekend.
It's we got a fresh example.
Exactly. And here's the funny thing, where we'll talk about different parts if you'd like, but also the idea of like everything happens for a reason. Everything happens to you. Sorry, not to you. Everything happens for you, not to you. So like, what's the lesson in it? So I have a fairly new vehicle, a 2023 GMC Yukon. I'm really happy with.
Nice.
And Saturday evening, it's been raining all day after it's had freezing rain in the morning. And I jump in my new vehicle to drive to my friends. And the new piece is important in a second. You'll see why. I jump to drive to my friends. And as I drive to my friends, I hear some water leaking in the back, but I can't see anything. And I'm like, maybe the windows open or something, right? So I put the windows up, make sure everything is good. I mean, they were up anyway. And then as I get to a stop sign a couple of minutes later, and I slow down, water starts pouring from the main console, from the ceiling, from the sides, from all the vents, everywhere else. And that's why I mentioned the new part of the car is important, because I'm like, wow, this is a new car. What's going on? Now, old me in this moment would freak out. Of course, I would feel the victim. I would be like, why is this happening to me? All those things. I would turn around the car, get home, try to deal with it, even though it's Saturday night, like no shops are open, nothing is open. Ruin the rest of the weekend for myself, probably call a bunch of people up to complain, have a pity party for myself, and then pretty much continue down that path, right? That would be me a few years ago.
Okay.
Now, over the years, of course, I've developed methods, and what I'm going to share with your audience as well now, to how we can literally become aware of the thoughts, interrupt the thoughts and patterns,
yes,
replace them with something better, and be able to move on with your life without them turning into much bigger issues, like I mentioned, right, where it like snowballs and now it ruins a week for you, or a weekend, or a big part of your life. Mm-hmm. So what I did, so some of those negative emotions came up, not emotions either, but negative thoughts came up. It's like, I don't have time for this right now. Why is this happening? This is a new car, blah, blah, blah. And I caught myself. That's the awareness piece that we talked about, yes, right? I became aware, okay, this is what I'm thinking. And I had a choice to make, because now I have awareness. Do I use my knowledge to stop this if I don't agree with the thoughts? Or do I let them get big and impact the rest of my day? So I decided to, those thoughts obviously create some feelings and emotions. I allowed myself to feel those and then let them go. You and I talked about it already. Mm-hmm. And then I was able to go through my interrupt pattern, replace them with positive thoughts. And long story short, I got to my friends, cleaned the car up, went upstairs for the gathering, the party. I was there for 4 hours. This incident, despite the severity of it and how inconvenient it was, has not come up once in that 4 hours. I was able to.
Oh, wow. That's pretty impressive.
Right? Like, that's why.
That's pretty impressive. Yeah.
I didn't realize it until after, when I was doing some retrospection. And again, like if we're talking about the reasons behind why that happened, one reason could be to reinforce how far I've come to myself, right? Because it's not anyone else, to myself. Wow, you've actually made a lot of progress, Constantin.
Yeah, that's huge. That is huge. I agree too. That is, that's a pat yourself on the back. That's to give yourself a rub. Like, yeah, we're doing things.
I love that you said the pat on the back. That will come into the tool that we'll talk about in a second. And the second piece of that, look at this. I get to tell this story to you now and your audience. I've told the story to a few people this week, and everyone has the same reaction as you. It's like, wow, I would have reacted differently in that moment.
Yeah, I would have been the same until I would have complained there at the party, though. That's the twist that I would have taken. That's the only little difference. I would have been like, okay, somebody would have known about it. I'd have been like, oh my gosh. So that is impressive. Wow.
Now, but here's the thing. It doesn't happen overnight. And that's what I'm saying. You have the power to change everything. Now, let me ask you this, Chris, right? If you felt that talking to others, complaining, let's say, calling it, or sharing what happened is what you wanted to do, then that's fine.
Yes.
No judgment there, right? Like it's a choice. That's why I said we always have a choice, which means that we can change anything we want or don't want in our life.
True.
So,
but it wouldn't have fixed the car, and it wouldn't have fixed the water that was pouring in at that moment. You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't have made any difference with the situation. You know, so this is it. It's like, do I want to embark on this, waste the energy to put out for it, and then as soon as you start talking about it, you bring those feelings right back. The anger, all of it comes right back. And I tell friends, I'm like, let's not talk about it right now. Like this, we don't need to hear it, because you're still in that moment, and it feels like now you're yelling at me, and I know you're not. But like, let's just let it be. We don't have to talk about it right now. You know,
exactly. You know what that happens too, right? As you essentially start sharing something like that, and there is a place and a purpose for everything. Meaning that if you needed advice and you needed someone to listen to you,
then there's a different time. Yes, exactly. There's a time and place for all of that. You're right. Right.
If you're complaining, like you said, if you're doing that, then other people get permission, and it's going to turn into a negativity fest, as I like to call it, which is essentially pretty much you just share negativity with each other, and that's how you find a bond. But that's going to leave everyone feeling meh at the end of the night, right? And it's not going to have a good impact on the rest of the week, rather than focusing more on the positivity as much as you can. I mean, not ignoring the negative stuff, because it's still there. You still have to deal with it.
But yeah, you're true. Just not feeling like it's a pity party. There's definitely more. It's less energy wasted in enjoying the moment, you know, or just trying to let it pass compared to, wow.
And there was a second part of that, which was a bigger realization for me as well, because for me, I was a different part of my journey. But I left that party 4 hours or 5 hours later, and the first thought that came up, literally just for a brief second as well before I interrupted it, was like, oh, I should call my parents, and I should text this and this friend and tell them what happened. Again, from a place of like a pity party, because I'm like, look at what happened to me. Not because I'm like, I need advice what to do, because I
know. Okay. Got it. The intention was different.
Exactly. I'm going to take the car to the dealership. I knew what I need to do. It's not like I had to, 5 options and I had to weigh them. I called myself and I said, you know what? I'm not going to call anyone. I'm not going to tell anyone anything, because the state I'm in right now, if I allow that, I know what path that's going to take me on. It's going to take me from a thought of, again, victim, to feelings of being a victim, to then actions of being a victim. So they make it the call.
Then you the victim.
I'm going to have outcomes out of it, right? Which are not going to be favorable for me. So now I talked about what happened, right? So how did I interrupt all of this? So this is based in neuroscience, neuropsychology as well. So first, I'll start with this question for you and the audience. Let's say, Chris, you're sitting on the computer, you're working away, and you remember that you need to go to the kitchen to pick up a piece of paper and a pen to write something down for your partner that's coming home later. So you get up from your chair, you now make the trek all the way to the kitchen, you get to the kitchen, and now you're like, oh, wow.
Why did I come here for?
Does that happen to you?
Of course.
It happens to everyone, right? And in psychology, what they talk about is essentially that's your body's automatic response to interrupting patterns. So because it is something physical, you got up, what happened in your brain, essentially a scotoma got created, which is just a fancy way of saying a vacuum got created, because you did something physical to remove yourself from the situation. And then another thought, another belief went in, because anything, like if you look at nature, if there's a vacuum, it gets filled up really quick. And that's why you forgot by the time you got to the kitchen.
Wow.
Or actually you forgot in the moment, right? You realized only when you got to the kitchen. Now, keep in mind, I said this is automatic, right? This is our body's
response
gift to be able to do that. Now, if you can do it automatic, there must be a way to harness the power to do it on command. And this is what this tool will teach people. So let's say if you're in your home in your office, somewhere you can physically remove yourself from the situation, right? So let's say I'm sitting down right now to have this beautiful conversation with you. Let's say after we're done, I'm going to go through my routine, which is to look at what went well, and then I'm going to look at myself and, what could have been done better. And perhaps a negative thought comes up. It's like, you should have said this and you should have said that. And I know what pattern that goes on. I then physically remove myself from the chair. I stand up, maybe go to the washroom. And as I stand up, right, as I interrupt myself there, I take a deep breath in and I put a big smile on my face. Now, this is critical and I'll explain why. And after I do that, you mentioned this already, it's like the pat on the back, I celebrate. And the way I do it is I don't pat my back, I pump my chest and I say, yes, Constantin, we caught ourselves. And this is the key. I'm not celebrating anything crazy. I'm celebrating the fact
that
I
you could, yes, in the moment.
And I caught myself. And I'll explain why these two parts are important in a second. So stage one is interrupting it, right, which is getting up. Stage two is the deep breath plus smiling plus celebration. And there's an interrupt piece in there as well, because if you think about taking a deep breath in, you're bringing new energy in and releasing old energy, right? So that's another interrupt. And then you have a chance to replace it. So let's say the thought was like, I can't believe I forgot to mention this in my conversation with Chris. Instead, I can reframe that and say, you know what? We shared so much beautiful energy and we share such a beautiful space and so much information. It doesn't matter that we forgot that. We can do another conversation later, right? So it's reframing it. And now you put in positive thoughts and beliefs, which what happens? Then it leads to positive feelings and emotions and the chain goes down.
Nice.
Now, why is the smiling and the celebration important? There's a few reasons. There's quite a few actually, but I'll tell you the big ones. One is that whenever you have a smile on your face, and I encourage anyone in the audience to try to put a big smile on their face, like an honest big smile, instantly you're going to start feeling a tiny bit better. So you see, we talked about fear and love, right? That's a spectrum. Fear is on the far end, on the left, and then love is on the right side all the way. And then that's a scale, right? So in the middle, you have a bunch of different things, right? Compassion, empathy on the love side, and under fear you have being angry and sadness and all the things that come on the side. And what they have seen this in psychology as well, but also in the spiritual world, depending on which side you want to go with, you cannot be in two states at the same time. So if I'm happy, I cannot be sad at the same time. Now, of course, you can literally jump between states. I can be happy now and then 2 seconds later I'll be sad. But the goal is, with the pattern interrupt, is to essentially teach your brain that something good happened, so then it can become something that the brain wants to keep doing. So you interrupted the pattern, you put a smile and you celebrate it, that released dopamine and other good feel hormones in your brain. And the brain goes like, what happened? I feel good. I need more of that. And then it's going to associate the fact that you interrupted a pattern or a thought with feeling good. So the more you practice,
it's reprogramming.
Exactly. I call it rebooting the brain first and then reprogramming it.
I love that.
That's what allowed me to do what I did on the weekend. It's not that, here's a part where I made the mistake in the past in believing differently, and many people believe that just because you conquer the challenge, just because you know how to do something that's really hard, it doesn't mean it won't still show up in your life. I mean, those thoughts came to me while I was in the car. They were a result of my environment. Now, here's what my power was, right? I had the power to choose. Do I agree with these thoughts and allow them to stay in? And I didn't, because I knew what the story or what the story would lead, because I've been there all my life. From experience,
exactly.
So I'm like, no, I'm going to cut it. And I had the tools. And because my brain was already practicing this for a while now, it's like, I know.
Yes, exactly. As an
now,
effect.
The question to people, the only one thing I would want to add really quick here is that people would ask, well, I was driving. How could I physically remove myself to interrupt the pattern? And that's a fair question.
I didn't even think about that.
Hinted towards the idea that there's something physical you need to do. Now, some people like to yell. Literally, that's what I did in the car. Essentially, I allowed all that anger, all that whatever was building up to go out.
Okay.
And because it's something that's a different state, right? It's almost like you startled yourself when you do that.
Mm-hmm.
It almost has the same purpose. Plus a deep breath. I still do the deep breath.
It's still an action. It's a physical action.
Exactly. It's something you do. So that's another. Obviously, you can do that if you have people around and you feel embarrassed, right? But imagine people are asking me, well, what happens if I'm in a heated conversation with my manager or my team and I need to remove myself? I said, well, excuse yourself.
Go to the bathroom.
Exactly. It's like, excuse myself, my stomach is not good. I'll be right back. I'm going to go to the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
Get to the bathroom, go into a stall if you need to, take a deep breath, put a big smile on your face, celebrate. You don't even have to be loud. I pump my chest, and if I say to myself, yes, Constantin, and I can say it soft enough, or I can say it in my mind, right, inside of me, and it has the same effect. I've done it. I've done it while grocery shopping. I've done it while driving, as I give it.
Everywhere. It can be done everywhere, people. This is
exactly.
it. This is it. Because things are going to come up in your life throughout a different time. There's no set time that things are going to happen, right? And it's if you have the tools and being able to do it when you need them to happen, and that's not always going to be a scheduled time when we're prepared. So that's
exactly.
an honest thing.
Give it a shot. For example, I have a friend of mine. She's a nurse. A couple of weeks ago, we met for dinner. We haven't talked in a while, at least in person. And she's going through a bit of a tough patch, emotionally and mentally. And she's like, hey, I know you work with people in this area and you help them. Can you give me a couple of tools and a couple of tips? And one of them was this exercise, this tool. And she was a bit skeptical. And the next day, not even, 12 hours from when we met, she's like, you know what? I've tried what you suggested, and it actually works. I have no idea how, but it works. I was able to interrupt a thought that came up, and I felt much better after, and it never came back.
I love that. See, putting it to use, right? She put it in action and see if it was able to do. And I love that.
I tell people, start small. Do it once or twice a day. If you can do it more, do it more.
And this is it. We have to start small with everything, with all of the things you said and tips and stuff it's a step by step, and it's not going to always work instantly, and it's not always going to be something that suffices. That's why we have to keep continuing to nurture and learn ourselves. I wanted to ask you this final question. Is your glass half empty or half full?
I love the question. And I knew it was going to come to something.
You ready for it? You ready?
Yes. Well, I mean, this is an easy one for me in the sense that now I always look at it as a glass half full, because we can do anything and everything we want, right?
Yes.
Which means that if the glass is half full, that means I have so much more opportunity to put things on top that I want.
I love that.
Allow the universe to put things in there too, because it's like what my brain sometimes wants is not really what is in my best interest.
It is so true. You hit that nail dead on the head. Yes. Right. I wanted to ask, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners?
Final thoughts. Follow your heart. That's the biggest one I've come to realize. That was the biggest catalyst for me and I know most people might not know what's in their heart, but you gotta start somewhere. Look at your passions. Look at what brings you joy every day. Look at what you would do even if no one paid you to do it. See with that, do some exercises. I have some videos on the topic at my podcast, Unleash Thyself, and audio, recordings as well if you want to know how to do it. I help people with that, but find what it is in your heart and do more of it, because as I say, life is short, at least this life that you have right now. Make the most of it and enjoy it. Enjoy it.
I love that. Nice. Please tell everyone how they can reach you if they'd like to find out more information about you.
Thank you for the opportunity, Chris.
Sure.
And I would say unleashthyself.com is the website. Best place. You can personally send me an email at Constantin, there's no E at the end in my name, at unleashthyself.com. So that's my email address, or LinkedIn for those professionals out there that are on LinkedIn, Constantin Morun, and all social media platforms. I post content daily. I always try to inspire and empower people. And that's what I'm all about.
Yes, we love it. We love it. Thank you so much, Constantin, for being a guest here on Glass Half Full. We are so glad that we had you in today for a chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It was a pleasure to sit with you, have a beautiful conversation.
Yes. And we wish you the best of luck on your journey and things that are going on. It's really so great. You are right where you're supposed to be. So,
exactly.
Yes, just soak it in, suck it in, for sure. Thank you for your time today. Hello, listeners of Glass Half Full. Thank you for tuning in to another inspiring episode of our podcast. I'm your host, Chris Levens, and I want to express my gratitude to each and every one of you for being a part of our supportive community. Remember, Glass Half Full is not just a podcast. It's a safe platform for everyone to share their life experiences. Your stories and voices matter, and we appreciate you being here with us. If you enjoyed today's episode and want to stay updated with our future content, please subscribe, follow, and rate our podcast on Apple Music, Spotify, and YouTube. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us reach even more listeners who can benefit from these valuable life experiences. As we wrap up this episode, always keep in mind, you are blessed. No matter the challenges you face, there's a reservoir of strength within you. Until next time, stay positive. And remember, the glass is always half full. See ya!